Okay, this one's entitled Christianity, Politics, and Secularism in the West. Okay, this is the last one. And I do quote from Luke. Again, the parable of the Good Samaritan applies. But this is more a matter of Christian influence than just the Gospel of Luke. And so, Angela Merkel, you remember her? Angela Merkel. Did you know that she was the Chancellor of Germany longer than any other German Chancellor ever? Yeah. She was an amazing woman. She really was. And while she was Chancellor of Germany, she really was not just the Chancellor of Germany, but she was considered really the head of the whole European Union. She was the first among equals. Okay. All right. Angela Merkel, former Chancellor of the German Federal Republic, once remarked that politics is hard. She said this after Germany agreed to take in 1 million Syrian refugees. Do you remember that? It's a long time ago. Yeah. Okay, so she took in all of these refugees, I think partly to make a statement about Germany's, the fact that Germany is a different country now than it was then. Okay. German culture was shaped by Christianity. That's obvious when you go over there. It's everywhere. While the number of people that attend church remains low in Western Europe as a whole, its traditions and values and way of life comes from its Christian heritage. Luther's translation of the Bible normalized the German language. In other words, the German people speak today is the German Luther invented when he translated the New Testament. So he has had a major impact on German culture. Okay, because before there were all these different dialects. Now, what Luther created is the normal, what children learn in school. Okay. All Christian festivals are federal holidays, including Ascension Day. Ascension Day is a holiday. It's a day off. You ever heard of Ascension Day being a day off in the U.S.? It is there. Yeah.
We used to get Good Friday off, but not everybody even gets that.
No.
We used to get a half off. Sometimes we
Yes.
get an hour off at noon.
Yes.
Before going to church.
It kept shrinking.
Yeah. Most stores remain closed on Sundays. Okay, so you don't shop on Sundays. And most, if not all, German young people learn Luther's small catechism. When asked if there were too many Muslims in Germany, this was Angela Merkel, her response was that this is not the problem. The problem is that there are not enough Christians. That was a good answer. This is not a surprising response when you consider the fact that her father was an evangelical, which means Lutheran over there, pastor. Moreover, academic theology remains a robust area of study in Germany. Most seminal theologians, both Roman Catholic and Protestant, in the 20th century were German-speaking. This goes for biblical studies as well. An ability to read German is a requirement for earning a PhD in theology, no matter where you live. So while European civilization has become largely secular, its Christian roots are obvious. Okay, the parable of the Good Samaritan does not make a distinction with respect to who our neighbor is. In other words, the guy on the side of the road who's beaten up and bloody, it doesn't say this was a Samaritan, this was an Arab, this was an Egyptian. It doesn't say who he was. He was just another human being. At the same time, Jesus called all his disciples to preach the gospel to all people. This is in Matthew. And baptize them in the name of the triune God. How does the church therefore respond to all these Muslims who now live in Germany? In the United States, immigration is less of a problem because most of our immigrants are already Christian, mostly Roman Catholic, because they're Hispanics. They're mostly Roman Catholic. However, in Europe, the problem is more acute. For example, in Sweden, bombs have been commonplace in Sweden. There's been a spate of bombings over there. Moreover, in a country where women have achieved equal rights long ago, that's Sweden, Muslim culture does not assimilate well with this cultural ideal. In fact, cultural assimilation has become a big problem not only in Germany, but throughout Europe. Okay, so if you've got people coming from all these different cultures, be they Arabic, African, or Indian, or whatever, you can have issues when the culture you're in is so steeped in Christian traditions. And by the way, as you probably know, northern Germany is Protestant, southern Germany, Bavaria, is Catholic. When I took a group of pilgrims on a trip designed to follow in the footsteps of Paul's journeys, along with the 7 churches mentioned in the book of Revelation, our guide was Muslim, and he was from Turkey. His name was Mustafa. I remember him very well. He now lived in Holland, having married a Dutch woman. When I asked him if this was unusual, he said no. Many Muslims lived in Holland, and in Western Europe in general. Since I was behind the times, this was surprising to me. Now, it is not unusual to hear people of African descent speaking perfect Norwegian while riding on their mass transit trains in Norway. Yeah, I'll be standing there on this train, and I'll see these 2 African kids speaking perfect Norwegian. In other words, Europe has become a place of great diversity. This is not just an American phenomenon anymore. All right? So there's diversity there just as there is here. On the other hand, in other parts of the world where Christianity has had little, if any, influence, diversity of people from many backgrounds is an anomaly. In other words, it doesn't happen. If you were to travel to Iraq, Iran, Pakistan, China, Vietnam, Argentina, most anywhere, the population would consist mostly of those who have been native born to that country. Sure, the existence of multinational corporations has brought many Westerners to other places on the globe, but this is not the result of migration or immigration. Over the last several decades, people from all over the world have migrated to Western countries. No doubt this is partly due to the concentration of wealth in the West. In other words, the wealth is, we're wealthier, obviously. And there's the promise of a better life. But there's more to it than that, okay? So, let me clarify. If the West remained as wealthy as it is, we would attract people for that reason, people wanting a better life, okay? But if the West was not welcoming of other people, if the West said, no, we don't want you, then it would be a different story than what it is. Okay? So there's more to it than just the wealth of the West that's attracting people here. One exception is Norway. They have the largest sovereign wealth fund in the globe, making them the richest country per capita in the world due to their large oil reserves. However, they are also very concerned to preserve their cultural past. So in order to keep all those small farmers in business in Norway, the farms are very small, farms that are far too small to make a profit in today's market, they subsidize each of these farmers so that they can keep growing their crops, maintain their oversized and beautiful barns, and preserve the lovely countryside. Okay, Norway is not going to do anything to endanger this centuries-long heritage. So while there is some immigration into the cities, mainly Oslo, which is the big city, where they have built dense, high-rise apartments near the railroad tracks. You see them because when we take the train back and forth from her cabin, we can see them. Okay? You will not see much diversity anywhere else. That's where you see the diversity, in those high-rise apartments. In any case, aside from Norway, the rest of Europe is getting very diverse. Are there any reasons for this aside from the relative wealth these countries have? As far as the number of immigrants go, the U.S. takes in more legal and illegal immigrants than any other country on earth. This year alone, the number exceeds 3 million. Of course, it is essential to take note of the fact that we need these workers to accomplish jobs native-born Americans won't do. Up in Sonoma County alone, if we didn't have these workers, there would be no grape harvest. Okay, so while over time they will be replaced by machine harvesters, for the time being, we need these immigrants to work in the fields, in the meat packing plants, and in other jobs Americans won't or don't aspire to. What does all this have to do with Luke? As Angela Merkel knew, the man who was helped by the Good Samaritan was not identified. Moreover, Jesus wandered over to foreign lands on many occasions. He went to Tyre, which was in Phoenicia, Sidon, which was also in Phoenicia, and the Decapolis, which is an area of 10 cities of Greco-Roman origin. Not to mention Samaria, where he went many times. The point of the parable is simple. Everyone in whom you come in contact is your neighbor. The fact is, he made no distinctions on the basis of where a person came from. He also ministered to Roman soldiers. Remember the soldier who wanted his slave healed? People who were hated as occupiers. This is one of the reasons he got into trouble with the authorities. His ministry was not just to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. It was to everyone. Diversity set him apart from all other rabbis. Christian nations, therefore, are not to exclude anyone. Okay, the point is that it is no accident that the West is becoming more diverse as travel is made easier. Christianity is the only region that encourages such a thing because of our Christian heritage. You're not encouraged to immigrate into Iran, into Iraq, into Saudi Arabia, into Vietnam or China or Japan. Japan won't even allow immigration. There's no immigration in Japan. New Zealand either. In Christ, there is no male or female, no slave and free, no Gentile and Jew. That's Paul. All are one in Christ. So even though the wealth in the West makes this ideal more easily attainable, and even though German and American guilt over our past may have contributed to this, nevertheless, without the religious perspective that all people are equal in the sight of God, this mass exodus would not have happened here. More recently, the idea of the value of diversity has taken on a goal in connection with the so-called woke culture. You all heard the word woke before. Yeah. Based as it is on a version of Marxist ideology, which believes history is primarily driven by a power struggle between the powerless and the powerful, the woke believe that European colonialism and American slavery represent the exploitation of people of color by Europeans. Another rebirth of Christian ethics took place during the Me Too movement. After Harvey Weinstein was convicted of sexual assault, a protest movement broke out in New York City, wherein the female protesters wore costumes that resembled the clothes worn by Puritan women during the colonial period. Do you remember that? They wore those hats that were like this. Okay. The idea came from a novel written by a Canadian author, and her plot was that the women who lived in what looked like a New England settlement wore these Puritan outfits. However, what was really going on is that these women were slaves to a patriarchal society, and their job was simply to bear children. The point? Women are slaves to men who want them to bear their children, but the men are in control. Okay, that was the theory behind the protest march, where these women dressed up like Puritan women, whom they imagined were oppressed by the Puritans of their day and age. Obviously, the message is that patriarchal societies are bad, and that women who live under these conditions have no control over their lives. Unfortunately, the person who wrote this novel, unless she meant it as a spoof, did not know anything about the communities she was cynically dismissing as oppressive in this blatant way. There's much more to the woke that resembles Christianity than I have time to get into here. The quest for social justice, which is all over the Bible, especially the prophets and in Jesus. Standing up for the oppressed, that's definitely in Jesus. Excoriating politicians who have been at it far too long. Where are the new leaders? However, the movement, while it says it believes in love, you know, they have a saying, love is love. There's a famous lawn sign you can get. Love is love, we believe in science, Black Lives Matter, and so forth. Okay. One of them is love is love. Love is love is one of the foundational positions, doesn't resemble Christian love, which is agape. It is more like the love designated by the Greek word philia, which is friendship love. Love for people who are like you, friends. There is no God in this movement. In fact, I believe it is a religion looking for a God. There is no forgiveness. If a person violates their position on places such as Twitter, they are canceled, kicked off the site. So much for free speech. And if it is possible, they will get fired from their jobs. Reconciliation is not possible. Once you are canceled, you go on for good. Christian heresies have cropped up again and again. The woke are like one of these. They affirm some Christian values while ignoring or excoriating others. And as such, what they accomplish is division, not peace and reconciliation. Okay? So while the movement does emphasize social justice, we're working for the underprivileged, getting them in positions with more power, and justice for people who are oppressed. Nevertheless, at the same time, there's no forgiveness in this movement. Once you do the wrong thing, you're out. And you can even, if you violate one of its principles, you can even lose your job, which some people have. Okay? Okay. All right, thank you all for coming to this particular series.